Our next session invites us to awaken the depths of our perception and embark on a truly sensory journey. We are deeply honored to welcome Mrs. Lakshmi Sarkar.
Sai Ram, everyone. My humble salutations to our beloved Bhagwan. Thank you so much, Vidya, Vahini team, Sauravji, and the excellent August team to giving me this opportunity to be on this podium today. Thank you so much. We've been hearing about neuroplasticity, neurodiversity since the past 1.5 or nearly 2 days now. So I wouldn't want to repeat. I can very comfortably exclude some of my slides. So I'm happy about it. So let me start with what is brain. It's a little fellow, the fattest organ of the human brain body. It's 1.3 kgs, but does massive work. When we talk about neuroplasticity, and by the way, we all have badges with all these points. So I'm privileged, I don't have to read all this. When we go precisely to the brain functions, brain basically is responsible for receiving various sensory stimuli from the environment around us, process them, and initiate a response against it, either in the form of movements or in the form of a behavior, a function, or social communication. So it's a seat of intelligence, basically. Today, we have gathered here to learn one very important aspect of brain, and that's the neuroplasticity. A lot has been talked already, so I won't go into details of my slides, but there are 4 methods how neuroplasticity happens. First of all, neurogenesis, that is production of the new nerve cells, production of new synaptic junctions or the connections. The third one is strengthening these junctions. You hear many times mothers say, don't repeat it again. So that's when we are weakening or pruning off the unwanted behavior or activity pattern. So that's when we are weakening our junctions. Now, 10 basic principles, a lot has been spoken about most of it, but I will highlight 2 very important things we have to always remember as parents or caregivers to any child for that matter. I haven't reached neurodiversity yet. When we say, first of all, the critical periods, we have to be aware that there are some very important, crucial developmental periods and patterns in human development. They are called critical periods. For example, the myelination, the sheet that is covering the nerve cells, it has a very, very important time, that is adolescence, when the prefrontal cortex myelination happens. Adolescence is the time. Prefrontal cortex is also responsible for the emotional control and social behavior patterns. Now, at this time, at adolescence, if an individual is devoid of these conditions where social interaction can happen, then that behavior can never develop, or a deviant pattern develops and cannot be changed. It becomes very difficult. So these important critical periods we have to keep in mind. The second part is transference or generalization. Neuroplasticity has one aspect, that if a group of muscles are responsible for certain functions, usually there are more than one function. Like for example, the bulbar muscles of larynx are responsible for swallowing. There are conditions in dysphagia when also these muscles are responsible for singing. So if you encourage a person who loves singing or put him into singing, indirectly the swallowing gets better. So this is how neuroplasticity works. And there's the negative part as well, which we have to remember. The maladaptive neuroplasticity, which is like for phantom sensations. Like when one limb is cut, it's called amputation. So the signals from the remaining limb continuously gets received in the lost limb. We don't desire this. So it causes more of problem than benefit. And this is maladaptation of neuroplasticity. So we should remember that the brain doesn't know what is good and bad. We know it by our mind. So we have to be mindful when we are training neuroplasticity. We are not going to talk anything negative or negative vibes in front of our children. We have a lot of parents, when I start my assessment and I say, what's the problem with your child? And they say, he has autism. Oh, don't ask him to sit, he won't sit. Oh, please. Let us say he will definitely sit, ma'am, give him time. So, we have to be, our approach has to be positive because remember, neuroplasticity can get maladaptive as well. Then, when we come to neurodiversity, this video, if I get time, I'll play at the end. Now, what is neurodiversity? Like fingerprints, every brain is unique. And most of us receive the sensations and the stimuli from the environment in one particular way. We process it in a particular way. But there are a few who have the brain little fundamentally, structurally, little different. And this natural variation in the brain is called neurodiversity. In the past, terms like dysfunction, disorder, disabilities were used. Now, we have gracefully replaced these terms to neurodiversity because it is enabling, it is strengthening, it empowers, and it celebrates differences. And these are some of the conditions where neurodiversity can be seen, the way they think, the way they function in day-to-day life. They may be hyper-focused, they may be excellent creators, they can be very creative in certain fields, and so that's why we have very good opportunity to include them in our society to make a lot of differences. Now, as an occupational therapist, we are very, very vigilant on two systems that function develop right from the womb stage. One is the sensory integration, and the other one is the reflex integration pattern. Sensory integration is nothing but the various senses we work with. We have 8 senses. 5, I don't know, I'm sorry, due to lack of time, I cannot make it interactive. So it is the 5 senses we all know: touch, smell, taste, vision, hearing. These are the far senses because they get information from a distance. And the near senses, which are very closely embedded in your body, are the vestibular sense, that is the movement and the balance sensation. Balance of body and mind as well as emotions are controlled by this. Proprioceptive is the joint and the muscle sensations, very well embedded in every small joint of your body, giving information from the very tip of your body to the brain. The 8th one is the interoception. We have never even realized that we start learning to say, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm sleepy. And the child, when they start using these terms, we get really fascinated because it's worth appreciation. The interoception is developed by the neuroplasticity. When you force it, when you demand, and when you pose a challenge on it, it develops. So we need to, what Dr. Jean had said, that we have to challenge our children. And novelty is very important in neuroplasticity. Then when sensory integration in the womb stage, like, we have so many examples from Ramayana and Mahabharata since morning. So yes, the sensory system starts developing right from the womb. Like the hearing, the auditory starts from the 5th month. We advise our parents, mothers to sing lullabies, all positive things, religious scripts, because the child starts hearing. So this is how the sensory system starts integrating in the womb itself. And when the child is born, they start interacting with their immediate environment and caretakers. And the sensory, all the 8 senses start working in tandem, calling it sensory integration. The second important aspect of the human brain development is reflex integration. We have something called the primitive reflexes. There are a set of reflexes that are very involuntary in nature, and right at the birth time, means they are developed in the womb, and when the baby, even day 1 baby, I see NICU babies as well. So even day 1 baby, we go for sensory integration assessments in NICUs. So day 1 baby, you stroke a finger in the corner of the mouth and the baby tracks it, thinking it's a nipple, and and when you root it all around the mouth, they start sucking. So these are involuntary reflexes, but they are lifesavers. They are protective in nature. Now, using the neuroplasticity, we give them instructions to the immediate nursing staff and the mothers that you have to start demand feeding. Stop watching the clock and feeding the child. Why? Because we are regulating the neuroplasticity, and we teach the mothers that when the baby starts, so this particular rooting and rooting reflexes and the sucking reflex, they have to integrate by 3 months age. So now the demand feed starts, and it starts encouraging the baby to cry when he is hungry. Only when the nipple goes in the mouth, he starts sucking. So it becomes involuntary to voluntary. This involuntary to voluntary, when the reflex becomes, it is called reflex integration. Now, when these reflexes are not integrated within the time frame, then what happens? All the development gets deviant or delayed or doesn't happen, because they are posing a lot of hazard to the normal human development. Now what is the connection between these two? So I won't go into this. This is moro reflex. It is the only unlearned fear in a newborn baby. So this is how we test the moro. So this is also called the startle reflex. You suddenly leave the baby, and the baby starts throwing up hands and legs and even sometimes starts crying. So this is moro reflex. Now, if this reflex, imagine, doesn't integrate, then what happens? The child is hypervigilant, all the time on alert. He gets hypersensitive to almost all the sensations like light, touch, tactile, and new strange faces. So he's always on the survival mode. And sometimes even it leads as long as to motion sickness and dilated pupils, and it becomes very difficult for them to regulate themselves. So this is the connection between the sensory system and the reflex pattern, which if it doesn't integrate. Now when we say these two systems are integrating, then what is happening? The sensory motor, this is a pyramid of development. So when the sensory and the reflex system integrate with each other, they function, and they don't pose any hazard to each other, the sensory motor development happens. At this point of time, the baby may crawl, sit, stand, walk, explore with toys, and interact with the caretakers. So this is the sensory motor period. Now, in the sensory motor period, the generalization and the learning happens. When this happens, the perceptual skills are improved. That means if a child has learned something through his experience, like he has suddenly pressed a toy or a rattle and he got the sound the first time, or the light, and he didn't like it and he cried. Next time he sees the toy, he won't touch it. This is perceptual motor development. So this stage, when he sees and learns, so he is perceiving. Like Mr. Saurabh had just mentioned in the morning, that seeing and visualizing something or perceiving something are two different things. Hearing and auditory perception are two different things. So this is how the pyramid develops. And at the top is the cognition and the intellect. Now I should mention that when the human brain develops, it develops from the back to the front. So the back side of the brain is the primitive brain, or the brain stem. That develops first, and then as with age, it takes around 25 years of age for the complete structural development of the human brain. So in these years, the last part that develops is the frontal part, the executive functions, and the cognition or the intellect develops. Now, if sensory system is not integrating with each other in tandem, what happens? It's the analogous to this kind of a traffic problem. So it's systematically not moving, the signals are not working, the people who are driving these cars are not sane. So what happens? Suppose there's an accident in the middle. So this is the kind of situation what happens to a sensory processing disorder brain, when they are not working in tandem or the reflex have not integrated properly. We all have some optimal functioning or arousal period of time. Now we need constant tea breaks, because we all know that 2 hours, 3 hours is optimal for us. We function well, and then we start regressing, either getting hyper or hypo, depending on how our brain receives stimuli. But we have, by and large, longer periods of these optimal arousal. In children with neurodiversity, this optimal arousal period is very, very short. And they are most of the time hyper or hypo. So, through our therapy, sensory integration therapy, reflex integration patterns, we are increasing the optimal functioning time indirectly. And this happens with continuous rewiring, which is nothing but neuroplasticity. Now, if the child is hyper, because his threshold of sensory system is very, very high, he'll be a seeker. He'll keep on bumping onto objects, pinching things to just feel that what he's touching and holding. So, and avoider will be when the brain is hyper, he gets hypo. and he is just aloof, doesn't want to experience any kind of sensory stimuli. So these are the two ends of the spectrum of sensory processing. And Dr. Jean Ayers was the first one to formulate sensory integration, and we follow her footsteps to understand the sensory cups. And the children who have sensory processing disorder, we all very easily, there is sensory processing disorder stand-alone diagnosis in DSM-5 now, but most of the time it gets mixed up with autism. And though autism children, all of them have sensory processing disorders, but all sensory processing disordered children do not have autism. We have to remember this. But one thing is good about occupational therapists, we don't believe in labels. The child comes to us, we see them as a complete holistic way. We assess them, we see what their problem areas are, and we then start our treatment sessions. So if they have sensory processing disorder, they may have poor eye contact, they may avoid lights, close their eyes, ears, and speech problems may be there, echolalia and all. And a lot of these manifestations you will see in social skills problems, and there will be, the interaction part will all get affected. I won't go into details. And so sensory processing disorder will be basically divided under the modulation disorder, discriminative disorder, or motor disorder. At this point, let me tell you, there are two more things happening in sensory processing. When we receive the sensations or sensory stimuli from the environment, the brain is receiving the senses, filtering what is not required, keeping the senses which we need, the stimuli which we need, and modulating and regulating those. That means even if a very, very high, loud sound comes into your ears at times, you don't give that startle many times or behave showing that you were very, very disturbed, because your brain has regulated it, modulated the frequencies. But in children with neurodiversity, this regulation and modulation gets affected, which are part of the processing. So it can be the problem at the receiving part, the input part, the processing part, or the output part could be a problem. Now, the output after the sensory processing is the function per se. For a day one baby, feeding and crying could be the function. Day last person, individual functions are there. So function is whole and soul for every individual who is, a human individual. So the function is the outcome, the manifestation, the behavior, and the communication part. These three are very important when it comes to sensory processing. Now, this is an ideal sensory integration, one of the pictures of sensory integration therapy room, how it looks. They are mostly suspended toy kind of equipment we have. And they look simple, but each an activity is custom made for the child. It is very, very thought processing. And, every activity, mostly we see to it that it has a vestibular, proprioceptive, and a tactile aspect to it, so that the child's sensory integration is happening at the time of therapy. When we are giving sensory integration therapy, we follow two things, the sensory circuit pattern and the sensory diet. Sensory circuit is, when the child comes to us, we have, as I mentioned to you, the arousal pattern. We have to see and optimize the arousal level of the child. Then we have to start with the therapy through different combinations of these equipment and activities. And then the organizing part. I'm so happy that Dr. Jean had mentioned a lot of cognitive activities, and all these are the things which we use in the organizing part of our sensory circuit. We give them activities, and the simplest form could be a handwriting session. Even to a 1-year baby, we give that because it could be just holding a pencil, scribbling. It not even independent holding of the pencil. But we all know it's bilateral integration, and handwriting per se actually helps a lot in the sensory processing. So, and the last part is the calming. Before the child finishes the session, we have to give him calming activities. And because most of the time the child either comes to us, takes the therapy, goes to school, or comes from school and then attends. So we have to make him ready for the rest of his day. Sensory diet is a set of activities that will mimic the same effects of sensory integration therapy, what we did in the department, and this will support in the rest of the day, and the parents are advised to do these activities at home. And sensory diet will also include the regulatory and the regulation and the modulation methods and accommodations. Like if a child is very fidgety in school, he's hyper and he gets distracted easily, we can suggest them to have a fidget in the pocket and things like that. And even here we have regulation problems, and we start losing attention or concentration. We go for a coffee break, or we start tapping on something, we start moving our hands and legs, we start shifting sides. So we know how to regulate ourselves. These children do not know, so we have to give them some accommodations and empower them to start learning how to regulate themselves. So now my goal is the victory guide. What are we to do? How are we to start? It's not rocket science. I'm not going to talk anything new. Every one of us has spoken since the last 2 days, but I'm just collating them. When I say the AEIOU, the vowels are something a caretaker or parent has to remember. When I say this, the first one is A. First of all, accept that the child is different. He has different ways of processing. Second, be his advocate. Now you have understood that he works differently. Be an advocate for him. When you are taking him to an environment, to a situation, explain to the people who come in contact with you. It can be parent or professional or a caregiver. Advocate. Start spreading a message, information that why he's different, how he's different, and how we can change or help him out. So these are the education part. Then education. First of all, we should educate ourselves. What all resources are there? What kind of therapies are there? Narrowing down and what the child will actually need. So educating ourselves on the condition as well as what's around us. Third one is initiation. Every parent, see, I'll give you one example. We call Baduans, means very, very, very interior of Sultanate of Oman. These people are not very, connected with urban life. From there, a mother comes to me, brings a 5-year-old child, which is too late, and she tells me, they cover the full face, and she is not at all only I can hear her voice, no expressions I can see. So I said, okay, what happened to your child? She said, from day one, I'm telling everyone I meet that my child has a problem. So I said, okay, what's the problem? She said, when I'm feeding, giving him breastfeed, he doesn't look at me. I know my child has a problem. See, most of the time, the parents are the initiators. They do see the differences. They do see the areas of the problem. We have to listen to them. They are the first ones we have to give importance to. So, and they should be the initiators. If they are not one and they have denial, help them. Help them. Tell them, this is the difference. So start it from yourself first. Take it. Then is the overcome. Organize whatever is available, your thought process. You are lost. When the parent hears this for the first time, they're lost. And we have a lot of professionals who, I'm sorry to say, but first of all, it could be a wrong label. Secondly, it could be the way they present it to the parents. It's most of the time comes like a bomb. So we have to see to it that the parents are comfortably trying to overcome the situation, and they organize their thought process and plan, get themselves ready. And then once they are ready, they have to time and again upgrade themselves. Same comes for the caretakers or the professionals. Now, when we come to, the second part is taking care of the child himself. First and foremost, protect the brain. I have seen a lot of, children having small here and there accidents at home in the daily living tasks. So we can easily avoid that. There are places when many times we tell the parents to actually use even helmets, especially for children who are hyperactive. So whatever may be, protect the brain. Second is the diet. Diet for the body and the brain, both, has to be very important. Diet, of course, for the body is the best food. If the child is very hyper, reduce the amount of carbohydrates or the sugars. So these kind of advices. But then second is the diet for the brain is the best kind of activity set given. Positivity in the house. Because whatever I said, that the child or the brain doesn't know what's right and wrong. So you have to, like we learned how to be a mediator, mediate the right thing, the positive thing. So that's one thing. Sleep is very important. The first complaint whenever we have assessments is the child is not having quantity or quality sleep. So once you start regulating the sleep pattern, see what's the problem in the sleep, no medication. I don't treat any children who are on medication. And if possible, I tell the parents, please don't start on any. So I'm not an advocate for any medication for these conditions. Of course, if they have any other, genetic disorders or any other pathological conditions, then play is very important for the child. Play could need not be necessarily outdoor, go to park and play. But at the same time, having said that, don't create parks in the house, because play in a park has many aspects. So play is very important. The next one, very important, is communication. 4 very important aspects of communication have to be worked on in detail. For this, the listen, speak, read, and write. The first thing is do an auditory check, do a vision check for sure. Rule out any issues in these systems. Then teach the child to listen first. From the very beginning of the child's life, let the child hear, listen to nursery rhymes, listen to books, nursery, the auditory books, audio books, listen to your rhymes, your talk, conversing. So a lot of listening should be practiced with the child. Speaking, of course, whatever little the child has learned, push. Talk in small sentences. Repeat the same word with the same meaning. Today it's water, tomorrow need not be tanni or any other thing. Water is water. Stick to one language initially, and then introduce new words, simple, very, very important and relevant words. Reading and writing, gross motor, fine motor have to be looked upon, and then work on all the 4 areas every day. So you see, you start learning what's the strength of your child, what could be the mode of communication of a child initially, and you can start supporting and strengthening that. So the next thing I'll say, after the therapy, you will see these are some of the results which we see. So this is usually in the 5th and the 6th sessions we get these outcomes, but the sessions have to be very closely placed. Like in a week, we see some children thrice a week, and then you get these results. But because it's a government hospital, sometimes it's not possible. So yeah, we have to prioritize our sessions. If the session happens continuously, you get very good results. Now the neuroplasticity part, when we talk about neurodiversity, very important is keep challenging their brain, keep giving them new tasks, make them learn new things. Once you have identified what the strength is, push them into that harder and harder. It's okay. They may fail, but it's okay. You may just encourage them and give them an idea from the beginning that if out of 3 you do 1, great. I'm going to be happy. So, just split it down, break it down, make the motivation level high by giving rewards for very small steps. Then focus and attention is very important when you're improving the mindfulness. So meditation is very important and a nice way of self-regulation. So we can introduce these children into meditation, some form of yoga forms to regulate, because neuroplasticity improves with meditation, and we have a lot of research and evidence on this. Seek professional help when required, and embrace any little success that you get and show them the celebration. And one important thing I want to bring here is celebrate in a way the child understands. Because I'll give you an example here. My very close relative, my cousin, has a brother-in-law who has, Down syndrome. So her husband always gets upset because the 2 boys don't have parents. So it's an unfortunate situation. So the brother, he planned trips to Thailand and next to Switzerland. And then he said, see, I'm doing so much from my brother, but he's all the time punching and he's not happy with me. Because what happened after all those trips, the brother complained that, and he took him to the best of the restaurants. But he said, he made me walk so much and I never had rice in 3 days. So you see, you have to celebrate, make them happy in the way they understand. That's very important. So very, very important for us is practice patience and persistence, because rewiring takes time and a lot of effort. Tailor the strategies very child specific. Focus on their strengths and be mindful on the sensory sensitivities. Definitely, you have to pay heed to these requirements of the child. Then seek support from other groups or other neurodivergent individuals or groups or families, and understand the situation and be a support to each other also. Create sensory friendly environments, and environmental enrichment is one very important way to improve the neuroplasticity. Then the next few points are like, as I mentioned, celebrate success, and you have to embrace neurodiversity with respect. Communication strategies should be built and should be in place from the very, very beginning, so that the child has high level of motivation and a very, confident to interact with peer, and in any kind of environments he's ready to come. Otherwise, a lot of times these children shy away. So, by and large, so many people say, I want to help. You do a lot of this work with these children. I also want to be a part, but I have not studied all this. I don't know. So, I always advocate, all of us, any little information we have, knowledge we have, let's start creating awareness, even if it's small for 4 people. Create an awareness program in your own friend circle, have small quizzes, and whatever way you can propagate the information and awareness, be the torch bearers. I love this word today, so let me use this. Be the torch bearer for neurodivergent individuals, and see however little information you have to share it before you sleep. So by this, I would like to conclude my talk, and I would always say that neuroplasticity the term is long, but it's not very, very complicated. It's very simple. All of us, everyday life, we are using it, we are doing it, but we have to focus more on it and start understanding what it can do. And one very important thing I would highlight in this summit, neuroplasticity has a negative effect as well, don't forget. Thank you so much.
May I now request Srimati Ambika Subramaniam and Dr. Akila Indurti to do the honor of felicitating Mrs. Lakshmi Sarkar.